Today we're looking at the latest NHL rumors, which could see Mike Babcock returning as a head coach. Where might he be heading next season? Plus, we have word from Darren Dreger that Mark Scheifele is not expected back in Winnipeg next year. Plus, we also have the latest talk around the Devils' first-round pick, where they might be looking to make a trade and maybe pick up an asset that can help them right away. Plus, we have Nikita Zadorov of Calgary facing a suspension. All that, plus some injuries, some prospect signings, and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, today we have a variety of NHL news and rumors to discuss. First up, let's take a little bit of a playoff recap here, starting with the Nikita Zadorov hit in the Calgary-Dallas game last night. He is facing a hearing which likely will lead to at least a one-game suspension for the Flames defenseman here, as he had placed a hit on Glendening of the Stars. To me, this hit, I'm not really sure what they expect him to do. I do understand the head contact, and I don't want to see hits to the head. Clearly, I think that's something that they should do their best to get out of the game whenever possible, and any hits to the head, when they're avoidable at least, should be punished, and there should be circumstances. But in this case, I'm not really sure what you'd expect Zadorov to do. I mean, he's coming across laterally, looking to make a check on the incoming player. He had the puck, so there's no issues with the hit being late. I mean, there's a clear size difference in this case as well, which to me is the main issue. Like, he didn't have his arm up high, didn't lead with the elbow. He had the arm tucked, but because of the size difference, he did make a lot of head contact. That's my take on it. Unfortunately, he is likely going to be out for Game 7 of Calgary-Dallas now. Because of that, we likely won't get a result till later tonight or tomorrow. If there is a result before this makes it to YouTube, I will post it down here in the pinned comments, so check that out after. But right now, we only know he's facing a hearing, which almost always, 99% of the time, leads to a suspension. So let me know your thoughts on that hit and what you think should be the outcome from that. Of course, we saw the Dallas Stars force a Game 7 against Calgary last night with a 4-2 win. So another Game 7 coming up tomorrow. The Calgary Flames need to get Johnny Gaudreau, Matthew Tkachuk, Elias Lindholm. They need to get themselves going here offensively. I know Jake Ottinger has been the difference in this series for the most part, but they're in serious trouble here. Gambling here against a Stars team in Game 7 that could shock them and upset them in round 1, which I'm sure would be anything but what we've all expected to see happen here, at least for the most part. The Panthers move on. They eliminated the Capitals last night with a 4-3 overtime victory. Carter Verhaeghe again came through clutch for them. The Panthers move on to the second round for the first time since 1996. A long, long time coming. So this team, as I mentioned before, which had reminiscence of the 96 team, except I think they're way better myself. I think the 96 team, really had a little bit of luck getting where they did in that playoff round and that playoff season last year. But, certainly this team to me is way better. This is the best Florida team on paper. They could be better defensively, sure. I'm not sure they can go all the way, but they certainly stand a chance to have some success here and do some playoff damage, which now they've done by eliminating Washington, which is a good stepping stone for that group. And now they wait and see who they play in the next round, which will be the winner of tonight's Game 7 between the Leafs and the Lightning. Now, of course, we also saw the Rangers force a Game 7 last night as well with a 5-3 victory. Game 7 for them in MSG could feature Tristan Jarry and Sidney Crosby. It's not a guarantee, but it is a possibility that either or both could play tomorrow night. Crosby was practicing earlier. They really didn't say a lot about what the likelihood was, but the fact that he's practicing means it's possible. Tristan Jarry, we know, has been working at getting back ever since the playoffs started, and he appears to be pretty close. He's been practicing for a few days now, and I think they'll do just about anything they can to get him in there, especially considering that last goal that the Rangers scored last night before the empty netter, the 4-3 goal from Kreider. It was really one that Domingue should have had. Went up and he made an original save. It goes up and over him and into the net. It was a little bit fluky, but still, the Rangers don't care how it goes in, just the fact that it did go in. And, here we are, Game 7 tomorrow night. So we'll see what the Penguins come up with for tomorrow night. But they could have a couple of big insertions there that could have a major impact on that game. Now, as I mentioned tonight, as I record this, we're within about an hour from the Game 7 starting between the Leafs and Lightning. The Game 7 between Boston and Carolina is already ongoing. It was 2-1 in the second period here, just shortly before I started to record. And, of course, the Kings and Oilers go tonight as well Going to be a big night for Leaf fans, Lightning fans, Kings fans, Oilers fans. It won't be long here before we know the outcome of Carolina-Boston, assuming we don't end up in a ridiculously long overtime or something to that effect. But I know Leaf fans especially are probably especially nervous to see if they can exercise the demons for the first time in 18 years. At least they're on home ice. Their team's relatively healthy. And the Lightning, though, I know John Cooper made some comments today saying a lot of people are writing them off, maybe saying they're not as hungry, that, they've won 2 cups, so maybe they don't care as much. But he said that's anything but that. He said, really, why shouldn't they be just as hungry as ever for a chance at three-peating and really creating a dynasty here? We haven't seen a three-peat since the 80s when the Islanders did so. It's a situation where I think the Lightning will be dangerous tonight, and we'll see. It should be a real good game, and be real curious to see the outcome. Now, we do have a prospect signing today as well. The Rangers have signed a 21-year-old Swedish goaltender named Olof Lindblom. He's a 2018 second-round pick, been playing in Sweden since he's been drafted, and I assume with the signing here that he's likely going to make the jump to North America and play within their system here in the fall for next season. Now, we also had a little bit of news out of St. Louis today, nothing too major. They did place Mackenzie McEachern on waivers, so obviously that's in order to get him back down to the minors. I would imagine this time of year they're probably not going to see a waiver claim, so that likely clears. And they also had a situation by winning the first round and advancing to round 2 based on some clauses in their contract with Tyler Bozak. He unlocks a $100,000 bonus by helping the team get to round 2. That puts their salary cap overage this year due to that at $1.1 million. So that's going to impact next year's cap availability. And he can also unlock another bonus if they make it all the way to the conference final. He'll have another bonus of $150,000. So that $1.1 million could end up changing to $1.25. So we'll see where things go on that front. Now, on to the rumor section of today's video, some interesting topics. As I mentioned a few times here recently, we've had comments directly from Devils GM Tom Fitzgerald suggesting that he's very much open to trading his first-round pick. Now, all these comments come before the draft lottery took place. I don't know if their feelings are any different now, considering that they were able to win one of the lottery spots and move up to number 2. They can probably grab themselves a pretty solid player. So I wouldn't be shocked if they don't trade the pick. It's possible they do move it, but at this point, if they would have been back at 4 or 5, 6, like somewhere different, I'd say it's more likely that it was traded. But if you look at the draft and the top prospects, Shane Wright's highly expected to go first overall here to the Canadiens. We don't have any reason to believe right now that Montreal is going to do anything different. So with that in mind, the next pick would likely be either Jerard Fagerberg, the Slovakian winger. He's probably one of the few, if not maybe even the only, or one of the few for sure, prospects, in my opinion, that has a chance to play in the NHL next year. I wouldn't even be completely shocked if the Montreal Canadiens do select Shane Wright, that Shane Wright plays another year of junior. And I'm not saying he absolutely 100% needs it, but keep in mind the last 2 years, a lot of these players, especially North American players, more so because Europe and a lot of their teams didn't experience the shutdowns to the extent that especially Canadian junior hockey had probably the worst of it. They really missed out on a lot of games and a lot of action, which is a lot of development. So for guys to stay back an extra year might not be the worst thing in the world. And a team like Montreal, if they're rebuilding and are not overly focused on, taking a big jump next year, that might be best for him anyway. So we'll see what happens. But Slafkovsky's a guy who I think with his size and strength, he's like 6'4", 215, 220 pounds. Like he's already got the body of a big mature man. So to me, that's a big part of making the jump to the NHL is having the size and the strength to do so along with the skill set. You see a lot of players with the skills, but they don't have a lot of the other attributes physically or mentally to be ready, prepared to make the jump. He appears to be one of those few exceptions. So New Jersey could get themselves a real solid, big solid power forward here who's really able to score and jump into their lineup right away. They may think twice about trading this draft pick. But a couple of names to keep in mind, especially, one for sure that appears to be making its rounds within the rumor mill here. I've seen this at a couple of different sites suggesting that they talked to Arizona about Jacob Chychrun. We know that they could probably use some, their blue line's not too bad. They have some players that they really like, and they do have some younger players looking for bigger roles here as time goes on. We know Ty Smith is still a real solid young defenseman who's looking to continue to grow his game. We've got, Kevin Ball. They have Obviously Hamilton under contract for a long time. They seem to still like David Severson. They got picked up Ryan Graves. But, to add a guy like Chychrun would be pretty big, in my opinion. Like, he could play with Hamilton. He could certainly be really round out a top 4. If you had a top 4 D of Hamilton and Severson on your right side and Chychrun and Graves on your left side, that's pretty darn good. And then you could use your younger D, like a Ty Smith, for example, on your third pair. It takes the pressure off of them. Now, would that number 2 overall pick be something that would be able to get the attention of Arizona to get Chychrun? It was revealed before they wanted 3 or 4 assets of first-round quality caliber. Now, that might change a little bit having a pick that high. Maybe we could knock it down to that and maybe 1 prospect or something like that. So, to me, that's a possibility. Now, of course, Arizona, with where things are at with them, they'd probably love to have the number 2 and number 3 overall pick in this draft because they're already picking third. That's a possibility now. And this is just me thinking outside of the box, but would there be any chance they'd offer 2 and 3 to Montreal for 1? I mean, crazier things have happened, but probably not. To me, if I'm Arizona and I get a trade with New Jersey and I get that number 3 or number 2 pick, I already have number 3. I'm probably not doing anything. I'm taking 2 prospects and moving on here. I'd let them have Wright. I'd take Slafkovsky and Cooley and call it a day. But Chris, we'll see what happens. But that pick of the Devils is certainly one to keep an eye on, and Chychrun might be one of their targets, or at least somebody they're going to consider and likely talk about. Now, Darren Dreger made some recent comments on a podcast talking about the future of Mark Scheifele and the Winnipeg Jets. Now, we have reports from Elliot Friedman and other NHL insiders who indicated and verified to the best of their knowledge based on their sources that as the Winnipeg Jets season wrapped up and as they had their end of season exit meetings to go into the offseason, that Mark Scheifele did not officially request a trade. He mentioned himself publicly during his own media availability that he planned to have what he would call a tough conversation with GM Kevin Cheveldayoff about the team's future, wanting to know the direction of everything before he could really confirm he was going to be part of it. He said he needed to look out for himself, and there's a lot of speculation that the Jets have some locker room issues and that Scheifele might be right at the heart of it all. And based on comments from Paul Stastny, at least that's my interpretation. We may never know 100%, but that's certainly what I kind of picked up on based on those comments where he kind of went out of his way to talk about Mark Scheifele without actually saying his name. At least, that's how a lot of people interpreted things. So, obviously, with Darren Dreger being as well connected as he is and plugged in with a lot of these teams, to say that I don't expect Mark Scheifele to be on the Jets in the fall. He said, I don't see a Jets lineup that includes Mark Scheifele. That was his word. So, certainly, you have to think that there's a really good chance, even though Scheifele did not specifically ask for it, that a trade still takes place. Now, keep in mind, he doesn't have to ask for a trade. But secondly, it was reported before that he had meetings with them, like before the end of the season, and said that, before the deadline even, and said that he didn't necessarily want a trade. He wasn't requesting one, but he was open and welcome to it. So if that still holds true, that could be something that we see. Based on everything we're hearing now, it really looks very, very likely that he's not back. Now, where does he go is the question. There's lots of teams that could benefit from a top 6 center iceman who can still produce at his level. He's got a good contract, so that shouldn't be an issue for a lot of teams. I know Philly's a team that's going to be aggressively retooling. Wouldn't be surprised if they looked into that. I'm sure there's going to be some others here as well. So let me know where you think Mark Scheifele could end up. But according to Darren Dreger, it really sounds like he won't be a Winnipeg Jet next season. Now, lastly, I want to take a look at an article regarding the New York Islanders and the future of their head coaching position. Kevin Kurz, the athletic writer for the Islanders, put out a recent article here in the past couple days suggesting that there's a lot of reasons why Mike Babcock, yes, Mike Babcock, could be and very likely is one of the leading contenders to be the next head coach of the Islanders. Now, keep in mind a couple of things. Based on this article, he makes a lot of good points, which we all really should know if you've been a hockey fan and you're quite familiar with the history of Lou Lamoriello and how he operates. A couple of things. One, Lou is real big on familiarity. This is more ways than one. Look at the veteran players he's had in Long Island here. If you're only familiar with him from his tenure as GM of the Islanders, look at the guys who keep getting brought back. Like, your Corey Schneider, your Andy Green, how he brought in Paul Mary from New Jersey. Like, he brings in players that he's very familiar with. He knows what they're capable of. He's seen it firsthand. He trusts them. That's just how Lou operates. He has this small circle of trust, and once you're in it, you're in it for life. And sometimes he has to move people away that necessarily aren't getting the job done, but it doesn't mean he doesn't think highly of you. Like, he had a lot of great things to say about Barry Trotz as a person, and I don't think that he had any issues with saying Barry Trotz is a bad coach. He just felt his team needed to be under a different voice. Now, he also went on to say that he thought basically that his team needed to be pushed harder. He basically said the team is on notice, saying that this is a way to say this is on you. You need a new voice. This wasn't working. And if I'm making a coaching change and things don't get better, basically you guys are next. Now, he's probably still going to tinker with the roster a little bit, there's no doubt, but based on him, the fact that he likes familiarity, and he's very familiar with Mike Babcock from their time with the Maple Leafs together, even though he didn't hire Babcock, they worked very closely together, and they certainly seem to work well together. Babcock is known as a kind of coach that is real tough on players, but as at the same time was able to get a lot of good out of them. I understand that Babcock has certainly taken his fair share of criticism for how things ended in Toronto. Things did not work out there. Of course, some stuff came out after about how he was handling the younger players, specifically Mitch Marner. And there's some stuff there that I wasn't too pleased either. I mean, Mike Babcock, before he coached the Leafs, was a longtime coach of the Red Wings. He coached Team Canada at the Olympics to multiple gold medals. I was a big fan of his without, having a lot of, inside knowledge of how he run his teams, just based on how he operated, and obviously, especially working with Team Canada and all that. He seemed to be like a really, really good coach. When he went to Toronto, there was almost like a bidding war. Like, he was very much high in demand. Sometimes a coach got brought in, I think in Toronto, with a little bit too much expectations, and they kind of took longer to meet expectations. Now look where the Leafs are now compared to a couple of years ago. If Babcock was still there, would they be where they are today? Maybe, hard to say. But, he's either way, he's got a lot of good history, even though I think it's fair to say he's probably learned about how, not to do a few things based on, some of the negativity and things that came out of his time in Toronto after he was gone from there. But Kurz does make a lot of good points here in the article that Mike Babcock very well could be high up on Lou's list as a favorite. He just recently went back and coached a year of university hockey in Saskatchewan. The team didn't have a great year, but that's not all on him. They lost out, I believe it was the first round of their playoffs, and the season was over pretty early. But there's not a lot of indication for sure if he wants to come back. But based on his familiarity and how Lou likes to operate, he needs a coach that's able to push players and be a little tougher on them and all that. To me, based on what he's said and what he's done in the past, also if you look at the coaching changes he's made and the kind of coaches he's gone with, it makes a lot of sense that this might be the direction they're going. I don't know if Kurz has any more of an inside scoop than what he's letting on here, but let me know what your thoughts are on the possibility of Mike Babcock coaching in the NHL again and being the head coach for the New York Islanders next year. Do you think that's a possibility? Do you think it's a good idea? I want to know your thoughts, and we'll discuss further in the comment section. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.